Thank you so much for joining our webinar. My name is Jonathan Ferris. I'm a senior director at TPMA, and we have organized a panel of individuals from across the United States to discuss this childcare challenge. It's a major issue that continues to pop up. At TPMA, we do a lot of work with economic development workforce clients, and we're hearing about this on a regular basis. And what I mean hearing about it is we have economic developers saying that this is an infrastructure issue, much like you have with utilities, with roads, workforce. Now it's childcare. What type of infrastructure do you have in place for childcare? We're also hearing it from, what that pipeline of workers might look like. A lot of the jobs within this industry are lower wage, what the skill sets are, what we can do to have training programs in place, what the best method is to make that happen. So we're hearing it from that perspective. And then just this whole notion of what it means for policy from a statewide level. What is the role of the public sector in this? What does it mean to have public-private partnerships? So a lot of ideas that are out there. And what we want to do today is talk with some individuals that have implemented and led some very unique initiatives, talk about what their experiences have been. And then we're going to leave some questions. We have a great group of individuals from a variety of different organizations, variety of different viewpoints. So we want to leave some time for questions. So I'll dive in. I'm going to go around the horn so each of our panelists can do a little bit of intro about themselves. So I'm going to start with Erin Emerson. Erin, go ahead and introduce yourselves. And for each panelist, I'm going to ask the question, what do you think is the primary focus we should be having right now related to childcare? I know that's a big question, but I think just diving into that a little bit, and then we'll continue the dialogue as we continue through the webinar. So go ahead, Erin.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. My name is Erin Emerson, and I am president and CEO of the Perry County Development Corporation. And that is my county's economic development organization. Perry County is located in southern Indiana. We're about as far south as you can get and still be in Indiana. We are along the Ohio River. We are a really rural community. We're about 19,000 people. We have the most acres of Hoosier National Forest of any county in Indiana. So we have a lot of beautiful geography and just a really great place to live. However, childcare is a challenge here. I got involved in childcare as I was beginning my career in economic development in 2013. Our employers really brought childcare to us as an organization and said that it was an issue, not only in getting people to be able to come to work every day on a reliable basis, but also when they were dealing with talent attraction, filling, skills gaps in higher level management roles. It was difficult for them to attract people in if they had young children or were going to be having young children, because we simply did not have any licensed childcare. So they really brought it to us, and we thought, oh, okay, we'll tackle this. And it ended up being extremely difficult. There were really no providers that were interested in serving any more than what they currently were. So long story short, we ended up starting a center that began operation in 2015. It's the only licensed center in our community, and we started in operation 24/7 at first, and that's changed over the last several years, but we are still in operation. All right, I'll pause.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. James Empsch, you want to go ahead and give a quick overview?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is James Empsch. I am located in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am a past provider of childcare. I had 9 facilities here in the Phoenix area. We took care of about 1,800 kids a day, combined, 300 employees. I sold my company a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, I guess, and I've been working in the consulting realm for now, just trying to help other providers and other communities see what the real ins and outs of doing childcare preschools is like, and how to manage them and how to maintain profitability. That seems to be a huge challenge, is the profit piece or the affordability piece, and access also. So I've done everything from my schools were nationally accredited. I was president of the Arizona Childcare Association. I did lobbying, policy work, steering committees, just the whole full gamut, just to do what I can. I was in it for 30 years. And so I've seen this industry change from being a simple industry where there's very few regulations to kind of what it morphed into today and what it's changing into tomorrow, and dealing with the complexities of what this industry is turning into. It's not as easy as it was 30 years ago when I started, I will say that.
Thanks, James. Robin Howell, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Robin Howe from Penn West Edinburgh University in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, which is close to Lake Erie. And I don't know, there's a lot that has been said that I just want to add on to or even ask questions, but I'll just go from the point where we have started, and that was between Michelle and myself. We were able to get started. It was a professional development organization in our area. It's a statewide one, but we had the Northwest. And so we were able to start getting some of our workers who are in childcare to either start with a CDA or maybe work toward their associate's degree. And the tuition was paid for. So.
Thanks, Robin. And then Michelle Harkins.
Thank you, everyone. It is really neat to hear everyone's story. Michelle Harkins, in Erie County. Robin and I are neighbors. Pretty much, I am the executive director of Early Connections. Early Connections formerly was the YWCA, and we've been around in Erie County since 1895. Currently, we have 5 high-quality childcare centers throughout Erie County. But also out of our administrative offices, we help administer initiatives, one of them being Erie's Future Fund, which is a preschool scholarship for qualifying children from low-income families to attend a high-quality center throughout Erie County, Parent Choice Program. And also we became involved, I believe it was 2018-ish, 2019, COVID, plays games with my years, but we started working to develop an apprenticeship program throughout the Northwest region with Robin Howell and Penn West Edinburgh, and have been amazed on how that has grown. And we are currently just this in 2023 became the pre-apprenticeship sponsor for the Northwest region. So working with high schools, career and technical education centers, and feeding them through a pipeline to employment opportunities and childcare centers, not just Early Connections, all throughout the Northwest region, and also higher education opportunities. And we're fortunate to be able to work with the PPO to have funding opportunities for our childcare employees to help them, reach, higher goals and obtain better credentials.
Yeah, thanks for all the introductions. So as you can tell, just different ways that they're looking at this experience within large metro areas, rural areas, mid-sized cities. So the pandemic was mentioned. It seems like we all lived through that. We know the challenges that you're faced, as a parent myself, knowing what it meant to be working, to teach a student, to get a Zoom link, everything built out. So how has this become such this national headline? It seems like you see the New York Times article, you see the CBS News special all about this. Since the pandemic to 2024, what's kind of been that storyline of how it's emerged to this point? And maybe Aaron, I could start with you. I know that you're in a very rural community that's got a lot of employment opportunities. And so if you don't have childcare, you don't have a workforce. So I think that that's really where we might want to start and kind of build upon.
Yeah, thank you. I think that this was already tremendously difficult, and then COVID just really took things to a whole nother level of difficulty. But I also think there were some fundamental shifts that have impacted why we are talking about this, why we have people that signed up to listen to a webinar about it. And I think part of that was just kind of that work-life balance shift that occurred, and the need for workforce and how critical that was really kind of made us look at, okay, are we utilizing everyone possible that would like to be in the workforce? Do they have access to the resources that they need so that they can? And then I think it also made things almost like the bottom fall out of the childcare industry because of the increase in wages and how difficult that was to do in the childcare industry. And to be honest, we at our center were paying poverty level wages, and people were no longer willing to work for those wages. And I don't blame them, but we had struggled with workforce from the beginning, but COVID really, really made it 10 times harder. And I think that, it's not an easy job. It's really thankless. And I think that people are not in mass entering the profession. I commend the other participants on the call that are figuring out how to elevate the profession and get training. I think that's really, really critical that we treat it like, the profession that it is, the career, the fact that these people are, molding the minds of children during their most critical developmental years is really something that I think parents having children at home during COVID put that into a new perspective as well. There were a lot of people who didn't have to, their young children were in elementary school, and it was kind of off their minds except for summer. It wasn't something that they had to deal with all the time. And then having kids home from school really kind of brought that to the forefront again, and it became a problem for everyone. And it was, employers had to, we had always been so careful at our center to try not to make any decisions that would hurt families, because we didn't want them to have to not be there when their employer needed them there. Or we just were always looking at the big picture and how do we make this work for everyone? But at some point we got to the point where it was like, they're going to have to work with these parents. They're good employees. They have children. We've got to change our hours. Things have to change. And they did, but it definitely made things in terms of workforce, a whole new landscape.
Yeah, James and Michelle, knowing your experiences through COVID with your centers, so maybe talk a little bit about that and just kind of the situation right now that you're facing. So maybe, James, you could start. You had a network. You're a for-profit model, and so understanding what that looks like, it'd be good to kind of understand how the dynamics were at play with that type of a model.
Yeah, thank you. Like was said, COVID just really wiped out this industry for a while. In our company, we chose to stay open during COVID as the essential program, and we probably maintained about 70% of our employees during that time. There was about 30% that we just had to lay off because there wasn't enough children, but the key employees we chose to keep and pay out of our own pocket essentially until the PPP program came along and really helped us fund the good employees to stay on staff, even though the kids weren't there. And that was the challenge. The problem was a lot of the kids never returned, and they chose to stay home. The families chose to keep them home for various reasons. And during that same time, wages kept going up. And it was no longer, once the PPP ended and some of those other programs that were so beneficial to the child care program, federal programs really were the key in that, in my opinion. States came through, different states did different things. Arizona did some really nice things for us out here. But the long term was these programs ended and there still wasn't enough kids to fill the buildings, and the wages had seemed to skyrocket. I've said this a number of times in other meetings. A good childcare center budget should be about 50% of your revenue should go to payroll. And most centers today are running closer to 70% of their revenues going to payroll, only because you can't get or more. I see or more. Only because you can't generate enough revenue because there's not enough children, or the subsidy rates are not high enough to make up that difference. So it creates a number of challenges, Jonathan, and everyone on the call. I don't know if I'm going exactly where you want to go, but then it seems that kids are coming back in small ways, but the staff, we're still having a hard time finding enough staff, and especially qualified staff, to meet the needs. And we can go down a whole nother webinar about what qualified staff means and how that's impacting the industry and all of that. But the problem is still ongoing, and I don't see an end to it in the short term, unless communities step up, businesses step up and help subsidize some of these programs that are out there.
Yeah. Michelle, you probably echo a lot of what James says, but anything else to add from your experience with the sites that you have?
It's heartbreaking because we do have, in addition, during COVID, we had staff, seasoned, amazing staff say, I can't do this anymore. The children seem they're hurting. I mean, they've been through traumas. The parents are hurting. It's a lot on the childcare worker, and we don't pay them a sustainable wage. We have, staff on food pantry, and Aaron, you mentioned that too. I just wanted to add that this has been a lot for staff, and many have left the field. So how do we train up? How do we find a way to train up our staff so that we could continue to raise the level of quality that's needed and expected in our centers? That's so vitally important. I don't think there's a silver bullet, and there's not one thing that we can do to fix childcare. When you mentioned that, we introduce ourselves and share how we think it could be. There's so many things, and we all need to work together as a team to help solve it. Childcare was broken prior to 2020, and it just got worse. So we all need to work together to pool resources together, come up with multiple funding streams, and really raise the profession up, because they are our teachers. They're our children's teachers, and they do a wonderful job.
Yeah, I think that's a really good segue to talk about some of the just collaborations. And you and Robin have collaborated, and I think understanding what you all have done with workforce and this whole notion of apprenticeship program. So talk a little bit about that model, Robin, how that came about, and what successes you're seeing, as well as some of the challenges that you're seeing. And I think the biggest thing in this space is there's so many challenges, and you can talk about that for hours, but really trying to think about what are some solutions. You got to put yourself out there to try them. And I applaud everybody on this call for what they've done. And I think that's a lot of what our audience is looking at. What are some ways they might think about this differently? So maybe we could start with what you all have been doing in Northwest Pennsylvania.
Okay, and I don't want to take control of your webinar, but I do want to go back to one more thing about
Sure, yeah, dive
COVID.
in.
We've been doing a lot of research lately, and one of the things that came to the fore with some of the people who were interviewed was the fact that when COVID started and some of these childcare centers were able to stay open, there was this whole new appreciation for childcare and for the workers. And they felt that at that point, they had a chance to change the system, and it didn't happen. And that's why sometimes we lose some of our workers as well. So, but anyway, on to something good. When 2017 was when we first started with the whole idea of a professional development organization. in Pennsylvania. And it was really just a pilot program. And it was out of one center was out of Philadelphia, one was Delaware County, and then we had one in Pittsburgh. And once they got moving, then they decided that it was successful. So they started to invite the rest of us in. So we won the PDO grant, which is the Professional Development Organization. And the person who was writing the grant actually thought it would be good to take 4 of our state systems and put them together. But as time went on, it wasn't equal. It wasn't equal in the way that things were getting done. And we were killing it up here in Northwest. We were getting a lot of our teachers who were able to get their child development associates. And that is something they had to do. That was required of them. So then once they got in and they saw what it was like, then they were really excited to go ahead and move on to get that associate's degree or even further in the bachelor's degree. But I think the biggest challenge that we've had is that it grew so very fast in the last year, especially the last year, that it's been hard to keep it under control. And I'll let Michelle finish up that.
Yes, Robin's done great work in the Northwest region, and we followed a model that the PA State System of Higher Education Professional Development Organization and the 1199C Training and Upgrading Fund out of Philadelphia, they worked together, created this wonderful model, rolled it out in Philadelphia and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and said, okay, let's move this throughout our state. And the workforce development boards were interested. There were many people who were listening, chambers. They wanted to see how we can make this work, find funding supports to help it grow. The model is great, and you can adapt it to your region. And that's what's important. It's not a one size fits all, but why recreate the wheel? If something's occurring that's successful, try to replicate it in your area. That's what we would recommend. Personally, see what's working and see how you can adapt it to your region. And I think that's worked well for us, Robin and I, even if we didn't think someone was, could be a partner or agreed to be a partner. Make sure people know, make sure, the chambers and the workforce boards and the governmental agencies, state and federal know that, the businesses are looking at something like this. And please keep the higher eds in the picture because they're the ones that would be providing this education. And remember that if you're going to look at an apprenticeship program or a pre-apprenticeship program, the students aren't like they used to be. They need supports, and what kind of supports they need might be different. Each person might be a little bit different. They might need tutoring. They might need technical assistance. So think of all those things. I would like to give a shout out for the Pennsylvania Early Learning Investment Commission. They work with businesses all across the state. They developed a really nice toolkit model for larger businesses if they want to try to work on the childcare solution, because again, you cannot talk about the workforce without talking about how can we fix the childcare issue. They have a nice toolkit for businesses to see what would work for them. It's something neat to look at.
Yeah, that's a great resource. You mentioned a toolkit for employers. A lot of what I think there's 2 different aspects of this. One, it's from the provider side. And James, I'd be interested, what you found from a for-profit company, just some of the professional development tools you utilize, some of the pipeline that you had for getting talent into the room.
Yeah, thank you. One of the challenges that we found, we believed in education and building our employees up to get them the education that they deserved and what was needed for the career. The hard part, the hard piece was getting, in a lot of cases, it was single moms with a couple kids, with 2 kids that were our employees. And to get them to go to campus was a major challenge. To get that education piece was huge. So one of the things we did was we partnered with community colleges and got them to actually come to us in our facilities and do training and teachings. And that was very helpful. Those programs, the colleges didn't find it. They'd rather have the students on campus. And so they really, it was a real battle for us to get that education piece. But I'm just a believer, at least in the Phoenix market for us, we had to bring education to our employees. And if we wanted it and we were passionate about it, we needed to find a way to get the education there. We had great success with CDA programs. Getting them to an AA or even a BA was wonderful. The problem was once we got them to a BA, the school system typically grabbed them, and only because their wages were higher, better benefits. So it seems like we were just the farm league for the school system in many ways, only because of the wages that we could pay as providers.
Yeah, thanks, James. I want to hit on two things. And Aaron, I think this would be teed up for you, just playing off of what they're saying about recruitment. And then I had a question as well about industry involvement. You're an economic developer. So knowing you have major employers and then you have small, mid-sized employers. So that part of the discussion, I think, is really involved a lot now, because employers are coming to economic developers saying, hey, we're shutting down because we can't have,
It's
childcare
suddenly a priority.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wrote myself several notes that I wanted to not forget about potential collaborations. But one of those was with employers. And I think it's really important for communities to remember it's not necessarily feasible for one or two employers to tackle it. It's just not their area of expertise. And in our experience here, it's not something that they wanted to do. They did not want to be childcare providers. They just wanted to put some funding towards an organization that would make sure there was adequate access to childcare in the community. They did not want to actually be providing childcare at all. It also became feasible because I think we ended up having at least 10 to 15 employers that helped donate and raise funds together for our center when we had to do startup costs to get going, which was very, very helpful. And it made it feasible for our community to raise those funds when they all work together. I think in rural communities, especially, depending on the type of major employers you have, it's not always the right decision to maybe have it on site. Maybe if you're like biomedical or something like that, but we have a lot of, heavy automotive manufacturing, and you don't necessarily always want to mix that. So thinking about, where could we have a common hub where multiple employers could come together and help raise funds and make this available so their employees. And then on the collaboration front, I just wanted to encourage attendees to, get to know the providers that maybe you have in your community already, and find out, this is really hard. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing what we did to others, just because it's, I'm glad we did it, but it is really, really difficult. And we don't necessarily have this existing structure that a longtime childcare organization or a for-profit business would have. So I think there's a lot of value in getting to know the providers that are already in existence in your community or maybe a neighboring community, and understanding if they have the desire to expand, or maybe they're getting ready to retire or reduce seats, and then you could get involved and figure out how to stop that from happening as well. But it's not something that necessarily an industry that everyone wants to get in. So I would definitely recommend utilizing any providers that you already have that want to continue to provide it or do it for more. And then my other thought on collaboration is we've had some success working as a region and working with our neighboring counties. In Indiana, our state had a 21st Century Talent Regions program, where essentially they encouraged counties or regions to self-identify and kind of take an inventory of our assets or our barriers and